power of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt in response to stimuli over time. Scientists now say the adult brain is capable of self-directed synaptic growth. It's still capable. And why is that good news for us? We'll explain, all within the big picture of our Catholic faith today. On The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of Saint Joseph. I'm Jim Havens. It is Wholeness and Healing Monday, fighting to cultivate the health of the whole person, mind, body, and soul, with our co-host, my lovely wife, Becky Havens. She's a Catholic wife and mother with a passion and calling to educate people about the importance of caring for our bodies that the Lord has blessed us with by living a healthy lifestyle. She helps others to think outside the cultural norms and to be their own advocate while not falling into the many pressures of modern medicine. She's the author of Toxin Free in 12 Months, a 12-month guide to help you transition over to a toxin-free lifestyle. She also wrote a boycott list of over 600 pro-abortion companies. You can get both those resources for free and learn more at her website, safehavensmama.com. Our topic today, neuroplasticity and brain health. And just disclaimer up front, we're not doctors, not scientists, just regular people looking to live well and raise our family. We do believe in objective truth and in asking questions when things do not make sense. We're not giving medical advice, but we do want to offer a forum here today. We know a thing or two. There's still a ton we don't know, however. And so while we have our own personal experiences, so do you. We'd love to hear from you. We will put the phone number out as we get into the show a little bit later on. But Becky, let's start with you. Why your interest in this topic? And maybe you can give us also a simple way to explain neuroplasticity.
Sure. So I feel like this is an interesting topic, probably one that not many people know about, but one that I've personally been able to use in my own life. And it's a great subject to be aware of and to kind of be knowledgeable about, because there's so many directions that you can find healing within it. And so I feel like it's a great topic to put out there, and there's a lot of connections and a lot of things to it, but even just a simple understanding, I think, is really important. So here's a proper definition of neuroplasticity, which is known as neuroplasticity or brain plasticity. It's the ability of neural networks in the brain to change through growth and reorganization. It's when the brain is rewired to function in some way that differs from how it previously functioned. So basically, it's the brain's ability to change, reorganize, to grow new neural networks, and to, in our terms, find healing or new pathways to deal with trauma or stress or different situations. And it's really, really a cool thing to kind of dig deep into.
Yeah, and the aspect that many people don't realize, perhaps, but that is becoming more and more clear, that even in adulthood, the brain can grow new synapses, the connections between neurons, and strengthen or weaken existing ones based on experience, learning, and environmental changes. We're going to get into a lot of that a little bit later on, what strengthens the brain in this way, what weakens it. And but first, what about this area of healing from trauma? I know this is how I believe you were introduced into this topic, this concept, this science of neuroplasticity. So explain to us a little bit more about how that applies and how that's helpful in terms of healing from traumas.
Yeah, so I originally looked into this when I was trying to deal with appropriate ways to handle stress and panic attacks and just anxiety in general. And there was a Christian couple that I found. I think I found them like on Facebook, and they run a group in there, and they were offering a free 1-week course on retraining your limbic system, or retraining your brain, rewiring your brain. And it seemed really interesting to me because they were talking about, it's not this huge disease or this issue going on, but it's just, trying to balance your nervous system in a proper way. And I figured, why not just try it? It's free. And I think it was like, a few hours a day for a week, and they offered it free. And it was so much good information that I found a lot of practical ways to start dealing with different issues I was having. And some of the stuff applied to me, some of it didn't, but it was a very wide range of people who are looking for healing. And so basically it's taking your limbic system, which is a group of structures in the brain that control various functions, behaviors, and emotions. And it's kind of retraining those areas from where they have been stuck maybe in the past, or where you've had trauma or some kind of difficult situation. And it helps you to, retrain your brain to have a new response. And so a lot of times when it comes to trauma or PTSD, your body goes into a fight or flight or freeze situation, and it kind of stops. And your body's supposed to naturally come out of that and start functioning properly again. But a lot of times the trauma can be deep, or our body gets stuck in that. And then moving forward, our body, and our brain doesn't feel safe. It still feels threatened. So you continue to be in this fight or flight or freeze scenario in your brain, and then it's telling your body what to do. And then you have these symptoms, and people can get stuck in this for years and years. That can be like constant chronic stress. And it can cause all sorts of issues like high cortisol and inflammation within the body. And then just not having the ability to react appropriately to different situations. You might notice sometimes where, something traumatic might happen or something really stressful, and you kind of just shut down. You want to run away from it, or you get irritated or aggravated, or you kind of freak out. And that can be a big indicator on maybe where you're at with this. And for me personally, I realized, I could use a lot of growth in this area and kind of learn how to deal with different situations, and maybe heal from different traumas in the past, or just who knows, whatever was in the way. And just kind of learned in that week a lot of different ways to retrain my brain, what it is. So, yeah.
Well, let's get into that in just a minute. But what comes to mind is also maybe some phobias that people have. There's probably a lot of people listening that maybe have some unusual phobias, possibly. And they, like for instance, for example, if somebody had a fear of snakes for whatever reason, but this fear of snakes is so extreme that even being around a toy snake, they have the same sort of physical and mental reaction as if they were around a real one that's about to strike them. Even though they know it's a toy snake, they still are reacting as if it's real and if it's this massive threat to them. Obviously, anybody would want to change something like that if that's what they're experiencing. I don't know if that's too extreme an example, but anything you can share, I guess, about what you learned about what somebody can do in making use of these tools to affect the neuroplasticity in the brain to maybe make some changes.
Yeah, so when it comes to like irrational fears or phobias, or even just anxiety, a lot of people deal with health anxiety, and they feel like every little ache and pain is cancer or is the next disease, or, okay, how do I heal from, like, what do I need to do? I need to go to the hospital. And it's like taken to the extreme, where an appropriate response would be, okay, if you see a snake, okay, step away. That's probably dangerous, and then move on. You know what I mean? Or take the appropriate path to get rid of the snake. Same with an irrational fear. Like, there are ways to handle that, and there's ways where your nervous system cannot handle that. Mainly because a lot of times people who've had some kind of trauma, maybe associated with snakes or health or phobias and fears, maybe when they're younger, and they've not been reassured that they're safe and that they're okay after that experience, that's kind of when the brain gets stuck. So they deal with these irrational fears for years and years, and they're never telling their brain, actually, I'm safe. I'm afraid of snakes, but there's no snakes in my house, but I think about it, I'm deathly afraid of snakes. There are ways to start. Even as adults, there are ways to start retraining your brain to understand, I'm safe. And so a lot of that is self-talk, and it sounds kind of weird, but it's actually really helpful. And there's a lot of studies on this and a lot of ways that you can do it, but we won't get into a lot of the healing ways because that goes so deep. But even just when I say self-talk, letting yourself know that you're safe, letting yourself know that that's not a real situation. That's just my mind and my emotions taking me somewhere that maybe happened at one point, but that's not anymore. So you have to let your brain know, I'm no longer in danger. And soon enough, your brain catches on And then, like you said earlier, those new connections are made, and then you have a new way to deal with things. And as you start to do it over and over, it gets easier, and you will start to see changes. And so there's a ton of great information online. I have a really great information and resources that if anybody's interested, I can share on this and different things that I've used in the past. But really a cool thing to kind of get into and learn more about.
Sure. Yeah, we'll get back to it as soon as we get back. And this is a very interesting topic today, neuroplasticity and brain health. And I think, look, it's obviously very important what we believe, what we think, what we say to ourselves, which is the self-talk you're talking about. These things are very important, clearly. And so I think fundamentally what we're talking about here as a major point is that even adults, we don't want to get stuck. We want to know that we can change. Now, we know certainly prayer is powerful and changes can take place there, but it's faith and reason. Even just understanding that we can do things that will cause positive change is very important. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth, Wholeness and Healing Monday. Jim and Becky Havens here talking about neuroplasticity and brain health. Today, if you want to give a call, any comment, question you might have on this topic, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. And just to finish, I guess, the thought from the end of the last segment, there was a book that was out maybe about 10 years ago now. And these categories, at least this is when I started to become aware of these categories being out there and considering things through this lens. And that is two different types of mindset. One is a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And basically, in a nutshell, what it is to say is that there's basically two types of people that believe that they can learn and grow, and people who think they're stuck and they're fixed. And this is just who I am, and this can never change. There, maybe a spectrum where people might line up there, but overall, I think the argument is that no, primarily we're kind of in one of those two camps. I think I would be in the growth mindset camp, even as an adult, in getting into my late 40s now, my later 40s, I guess. I'm still excited about learning new things every day and believe that it's possible and that I can, and that I want to learn as much as I can. And I find that to be fun and enjoyable. And when I notice bad habits, I want to be aware of them, and I want to try to counter those by eliminating the bad habits and start trying to put into place the good habits, right? I want to grow in virtue. I want to grow in the good habits, and I want to eliminate the bad. And not everybody thinks this way. If you think that way, you might think that, that's just natural. Everybody thinks like that. I think that is how I think we all can think like that. But I think there are a lot of folks that are stuck in a fixed mindset that they just don't see things through that lens, apparently. And they believe that, life is just what it is. I'm just made this way. And, I can't learn a lot of new things, and I can't change a lot of things in my life. And that's just the way it is. One might say it's kind of the difference between a sort of like positive and negative thinking. But when we look at neuroplasticity, the science of it is very, very clear that we can grow and we can learn well into adulthood. In fact, it's going to be key to our brain health to keep learning and to keep growing intellectually, even in small ways, fun ways. And this is going to help us to continue to work our brains in a way that is very good and will help prevent cognitive decline and will keep us sharp. And so I think a lot of this with neuroplasticity, it's just kind of science giving the evidence that is catching up with, I think, what people have known for a long time, which is sort of what I think if you talk to elderly folks, they've got this kind of wisdom, and they say, well, I stay active and I try to keep learning new things. And yeah, that's a good recipe. In science, the science of neuroplasticity seems to be saying, that there's a reason that's effective. This is exactly the way that the brain works and brain health works even into your later years. Becky, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's That's so true. And I kind of want to just go back a little bit to what I was sharing earlier when I was sharing, let's go back to the beginning about how we kind of deal with trauma, how we kind of deal with stress. And there's actually 4 ways that people typically deal with it. It's the fight response, the flight response, the freeze response, and then the fawn trauma response. And so it's kind of interesting to look through these and to see, what do I gravitate to? Is this where I'm at a lot of the times? Is this just where I'm at when a stressful situation comes and how I react? But I kind of want to go through some of this because I think it's really good to know, how do we know that we could be stuck? You know what I mean? Do we know that just by everyday things? Do we have certain characteristics within us that we don't like and we kind of want to move on? Sometimes you're just have a certain type of personality. Okay. But sometimes you're dealing with these types of trauma responses that are stuck in you. And so this is kind of going through this. I'm going to go through this a little bit, Jim, and just share some of this because Sure. I think it's going to give people a good idea about, that I associate with that. And I kind of want to take the next step. How can I get out of this? Because these aren't really healthy responses to certain situations. So we'll start with the fight trauma response. This usually comes with a temper that's explosive and unpredictable, taunts, mocks, insults, or shames. My way or the highway, it yells, slams doors, becomes aggressive, becomes very reactive, feeling as though they're being threatened, will protect themselves at any cost, feels shameful after an outburst, talks back to authority. So that's the fight response. In a very stressful or dangerous situation, a fight response is meant to be aggressive. You're trying to protect. These aren't really, there's not too much of protecting. These are kind of going in a different direction, but a fight response it's not a bad thing. But these are some of the things that come when it's kind of disordered. The next one is the flight response. So chronic rushing or always going, feels uncomfortable, or even kind of panics when there's still, energy spent micromanaging people and situations around them, has a history of abruptly ending relationships, or phobic of commitment, feels trapped easily, makes plans to avoid any downtime by themselves, presents as anxiety or panic attacks, or being intentionally or unintentionally distracted. So flight response, that makes sense. They're trying to get away from that situation. Anything to not have to deal with it. And that'll kind of show you if you're stuck in maybe some of the flight responses. The next one would be the freeze trauma response. That's when you feel completely numb. Life is pointless. You shut down very easily, hiding from the world, procrastination, inability to make small decisions, endless social media scrolling, binge TV watching, confusion over what is real or unreal, often confused, misdiagnosed with depression, or giving up quickly. So that's, the freeze response you're dealing with. And this doesn't just mean after a situation this is what I'm doing. This can go on for years because your brain has not been properly trained. And then here comes the disorder of a freeze response. The last one would be the fawn trauma response. And this actually is a newer one that, scientists and different doctors have come up with recently as they start to see more ways that, it's good that they're going more into trauma and PTSD. They're learning a lot more and finding ways to help people. The fawn trauma response would be you're more people-pleasing, going along with others' perspective without connecting with your own, dissociating, or spacing out, a feeling of leaving the body, lets other people make all the decisions, avoids the situations that can lead to conflict, fears saying no to others, overly polite and agreeable, hyper aware of other people's emotions and needs while betraying their own, and then relying on others to help solve problems. So these are natural triggers, that our brain will do depending on the trauma that we've had. And they are definitely, I'm sure everybody can see a little bit of themselves in each one, and just to get a really good idea of how we deal with difficult situations and maybe where we're stuck and, behaviors like that. Maybe it's time you can take a little bit of a deeper look into this.
Yeah. And so with all of that, obviously, those are all areas where there would be a need for healing. Clearly. And then what is do you have a description of what the wholeness looks like that we're aiming for? What is the proper, the good and healthy response? What does that look like?
Yeah. So it's it kind of goes back when they talk about this more of, primitive times where, okay, somebody's attacking you. You're going to either fight or you're going to flight. You're either going to stay and protect and defend, or you're going to flee. You're going to get out of there. This is a dangerous situation. I'm out. Okay. And then once that is over, you should be able to say, okay, the danger has passed. I'm safe. We're all safe. If you're a parent and this is something that's happened to your child, even if it's a small situation, big things or small things can feel big to little kids. And so it's our job to say to them, you're okay. You're safe now. That is not a danger anymore. And so be at peace. Where a lot of times kids, when something traumatic happens, nobody's telling them you're safe, everything's okay. So they're waiting for the next thing to happen, or that same thing to happen again. That's why this, a lot of times this goes back to more deeper things like abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, physical abuse. And if somebody's taking advantage of a child in that way and nobody knows about it, so nobody's there telling them don't worry, you're safe now. They don't know that. And so, the total distortion is going to come out of these. And then the freeze trauma response, where you're just you shut down and you don't even know what to do. You just freeze. That's not even really a proper response at all. Really your response to a trauma or stress or something that's coming to you is you fight it or you leave the situation. If you're going to freeze and stay, then make it be proactive and do something that is going to help make the situation better in some kind of way. I don't know if that makes sense, but those are they're not bad responses, but it's just distortion takes over and then all these other things start coming in, and then you've not put proper boundaries on yourself, and then your brain is totally confused and going off in all these crazy directions that it really shouldn't be.
Right. So with the science of what neuroplasticity is telling us, even in adult brains, older brains, elderly brains, no matter what the age of the person, the science is telling us that even if you feel like you're stuck, that you don't have to be. Right. You can grow. There is a path out. And again, always, we would say we have recourse to prayer for sure. And also, there are some very clear principles, some very clear tactics, things that we can do that are going to be very helpful to them. And even just based on what you're saying. So an awareness of that, you could, if you're aware of that happening, what you're describing, you could say, oh, I'm freezing right now, or I'm in flight mode right now, or I'm in fight mode right now. And that's not actually the right response for this. I'm not being threatened. And then saying you would tell yourself the truth, which is I'm safe. I'm not being threatened. And then maybe ask the question, what is the proper response? And start to try to move in that direction. Is that right? Or what would you add to that?
Yeah, exactly. And therapists even encourage people to, when a situation comes up, is to enter into that situation, like you just mentioned, instead of running for them or trying to fight it, so long as it's not, something very scary or dangerous when you got to get out of there, but just smaller things. And they actually share that you should take yourself through that situation and say, okay, this is exactly what's happening. Realistically, I'm over here emotionally, I'm over here. Be aware of that. Understand what's actually happening. I'm safe. They work in different type of breathing techniques, and prayer is totally appropriate and essential in those moments too. And then that's exactly how you retrain your brain, because all people want to do when they're dealing with trauma is to know they're safe, and that's the appropriate response. Okay, I'm safe. Now I'm going to move on. And then your body gets out. The cortisol drops, adrenaline drops, and you're back to normal. If you're stuck in that, cortisol stays high, stress stays high, inflammation goes up, and then you're in for a whole world of issues.
All right, we got a bunch more when we get back. If you want to call in, 1-877-511-5483. We'll be right back. To the Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here talking about neuroplasticity and brain health today. Real quick, want to remind you, though, the Station of the Cross has its 25th anniversary conference coming up. It's going to be a great celebration, great conference, a big dinner going on afterwards. There's tickets for all of it. You can go to thestationofthecross.com. It's going to be a wonderful day, August 24th, Saturday, August 24th. Looking forward to it. A little over a month away. By God's grace, Becky and I are going to be there driving up from Florida with the whole family. So hopefully we'll get to meet you there. Again, thestationofthecross.com for more information on that 25th anniversary celebration. Becky, please continue on. Anything else that you want to share with us on neuroplasticity?
Sure. There's a lot of different ways to go. I know I talked about the fight or flight responses previously, but let's just talk about the different types of neuroplasticity. So obviously, plasticity refers to the brain's ability to change, and neuro just refers to neurons or the nerve cells that are the building blocks of the brain and nervous system. And so there's two main types of neuroplasticity. The first one is functional plasticity, which is the brain's ability to move functions from a damaged area of the brain to other undamaged areas. And the second is structural plasticity. It's the brain's ability to actually change its physical structure as a result of learning. So that just shows you right there, there's two main ways that we can relearn. The brain is smart enough to go to a new undamaged area to make that connection so that we can have a new way of understanding. So in adults, neurons that are used frequently develop stronger connections. Those that are rarely or never used eventually die off. So if you're done using those bad connections, soon your brain will just say, okay, I think we're moving on from there, and we're going to start using these new connections, the healthy ones, the proper ones, and the old ones will die. And there are studies, based on this, knowing that our brains can do this. It just takes a little bit of work. Therapy is probably a really good way if you have, extreme trauma or PTSD that you need to, move forward with. There's actually a really great website, Jim. I'm trying to scroll through my notes to see. It's transformationcounseling.com. So those are therapists that will probably go through different ways to, use neuroplasticity. And there's like 4 different ways that you can use it. These are all Catholic therapists that can take you through that. But that's a really great way to go a little bit deeper. I just wanted to mention that because sometimes just the small things are not going to be enough, and you might need a little extra added support. So that's www.transfigurationcounseling.com. And I think the one who started that was Dr. Crete. Is that right? Right. That's his website. Yeah, we had him on the show, and he was wonderful. And I would highly suggest that. Even the website is helpful. So that's transfigurationcounseling.com. So back to the plasticity. So, all right, let's go through some of the benefits of neuroplasticity. You might have some good ones, Jim, but I'll just go through a few that I have. So it's the ability to learn new things, the ability to enhance existing cognitive capabilities. This is really helpful for people recovering from strokes or traumatic brain injuries. This is something that they use for those type of patients. It's strengthening areas where function is lost or has declined. Relearning new ways of coping with trauma and healing from old trauma and stressors, and improvements that can boost brain fitness. So very helpful for probably most people. And even knowing that if they're using this for people dealing with traumatic brain injuries and strokes, that's like relearning how to walk again, so that's just the physical part of it, and relearning all those physical things, where it also goes the same way with relearning how, your memory and relearning how to think appropriately. So it's not just dealing with trauma, but there's a lot of other ways to use to utilize the benefits of neuroplasticity.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, it's very. I mean, all that I'm finding on this is all the things that are good for brain health. What neuroplasticity, strengthening these good connections in the brain. Everything that I'm finding, it lines up with so many other good things. And so it basically is just very affirming. Like if you do the good things that we already know, there are tremendous benefits in the brain that you wouldn't even be aware of. So for instance, just to go down the list that I have a little bit, what you were mentioning there, learning, I have learning and experience. Engaging in new learning experiences and challenges can stimulate the growth of new synapses. Activities such as learning a new language, playing a musical instrument, or solving puzzles promote synaptic growth. And just to pause on this for a moment, I think this is very important because you think, oh, well, learning a new language, playing a musical instrument, it's a little bit late for me to be getting into all that. But the interesting aspect of this is it's not really about the outcome of actually becoming proficient with the instrument or with the language. Sure, that may be the outcome with enough repetition, enough practice over time, maybe. But that's not even the thing. It really is just working at it. Learning a few new words of the language, maybe learning how to play a few notes, going back to that from time to time and doing it again. Really, I think more as like a fun activity. But you're working on this thing a little bit. Even in there's a couple studies that I noticed here, even talking about singing, specifically, it lines it up with improving the language network pathways when it comes to people who have had strokes and have language issues. It says that singing has been, they have found that this is sung music helps in the language recovery of patients affected by strokes. This is what researchers at the University of Helsinki have found out. It says that now they've uncovered the reason why that rehabilitative effect of singing takes place. And it says that according to the findings, singing repairs the structural language network of the brain. It says for the first time, our findings demonstrate that the rehabilitation of patients through singing is based on neuroplasticity changes. That is the plasticity of the brain, and that this singing improves language network pathways. So again, people struggling with language after stroke. And so it says, according to the study results, singing increased the volume of gray matter in the language regions of the left frontal lobe and improved tract connectivity, especially in the language network of the left hemisphere, but also in the right hemisphere. I mean, you get deep into the science of all this. The bottom line is, seems like singing is really good for the brain. And we see that in a clear way in this example of stroke victims. So that's what you find as you kind of dig into this stuff. Also, physical exercise that has been shown to promote synaptic plasticity. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain, supports the release of growth factors that facilitate synaptic growth. Environmental enrichment, exposure to stimulating environments, social interactions, diverse experiences can enhance synaptic growth. It seems like all the things that are beautiful about life, that lead to a full life, guess what? They're good for your brain, very good for your brain as well. Also, healthy lifestyle, adequate sleep, a balanced diet. These things support brain health, stress management. All these things are crucial for maintaining and promoting synaptic growth. And then just some of the negative things real quick. On the flip side, chronic stress, lack of sleep, poor diet, sedentary lifestyle, substance abuse, social isolation, mental inactivity, a negative mindset. It says a fixed mindset, which is the belief that abilities and intelligence are static and unchangeable, can limit the brain's potential for growth and adaptation. Conversely, a growth mindset encourages learning and resilience, promoting neuroplasticity. So it definitely depends on what action we're taking, the health of our brain and our ability to keep it growing and to keep it fresh and to keep all these good things happening there. And so, yeah, just to drill down one last time on that, negative mindset and the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, just to say, pointed out there about thinking your intelligence is fixed and just saying, well, I'm not that smart. I'm not that smart. I can't even attempt to start to learn a new language or try to pick up a musical instrument. You're smarter than you think you are. All right. And you can do it. Right. And so just to, again, to be able to tell yourself the truth that, you don't have to stop yourself because you're kind of beating yourself up and just thinking like, I'm not smart enough. Give it a shot. and maybe even find some good community around doing a new thing where you can kind of do it with some other people. I think that would be very helpful as well. But you can do things you don't think you can do. But you got to take that step forward and really give it a shot. And that takes really fortitude, right? If you're afraid, to really have that virtue of fortitude to step out and to do it anyway. So just want to encourage you. We can do more than we think we can, especially by God's grace, which you ought to believe in and be striving to participate with. So prayer and participating with God's grace, we are capable of so much more than we would want to limit ourselves to, or that we normally would limit ourselves to. Becky, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's just taking in everything you shared. I could have made a point to so many different things that you were sharing, because it's so funny just how the body works and the way that God made it, and so many things that we talk about on this show. It's like we're saying the same things over and over again, and the same things apply to all of these different situations. And it's not just the physical stuff, but like you shared, it's such a huge piece is the mental part, and what you're telling yourself, and how you're thinking about situations. And people kind of like villainize their bodies when they're ill or when they're struggling, and they say, my body doesn't work, I'm mad at my body, and what's wrong with me? And it does matter what you're telling yourself. It does, and you can see the science is there. It's not just something we're making up. Just like if you're just sitting on your butt watching TV all day, how would your brain grow? Obviously, we know your body doesn't get healthy from doing that. Your brain is the same. It needs exercise. It needs practice the same way that your body does. And so it's so important to give that attention to your brain and the brain health. And most times people aren't thinking about that, but small, simple things that you could be doing every day, like singing. I know that there was another study about chanting, the same thing, as Catholics, we do have part of that in the Latin rite is the beautiful chants. And even our kids, they went to a camp, but it's called the chant camp at our church, and it was so cool. And they learned how to chant, and they learned different ways to chant in Latin, and they came home from it every day, and they're singing together. And I'm like, who are these people? This is so incredible that they learn that, and you can tell it makes them happier. They're learning, and their brains are developing. So I love that. There are so many easy and practical ways to, get out of these ways that we're stuck, these traumas that we've had. And a lot of it just starts with basic stuff, your mood. What are you thinking about when you wake up? What's your positive affirmations? You hear that a lot, and you're kind of like, oh, that's ridiculous, or that's cheesy, or whatever. But call it gratitude. Maybe it does make a difference in how your physical body works. So if you're struggling physically and you hate feeling sick all the time, and you're struggling with illness and inflammation, well, it starts in the mind. And if you can get that part right, your body will soon follow, and you'll start feeling healthier. You'll start feeling stronger, and it really will change. And so I know we're getting to the music, so I'll shoot it back to you, Jim, if you got anything you want to add.
Sure. Yeah. As we get into the next segment, I want to get into how the rosary is good for the brain. I'm going to bring that in, the science on that. So good. But yeah, just along the lines of what you're talking, again, if we just go with the natural rhythms of our faith, we're going to be in good shape. So again, praying morning prayer, if you're praying along with the church, the Liturgy of the Hours, Psalm 95 is always a way to start off the day with joy and praise and gratitude. And the church sets it up that way. We're going to be back with so much more. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here talking about neuroplasticity and brain health. If you want to get a call in, a question, a comment, last chance to do so here in the final segment, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. One other article I saw, it was entitled "The Digital Influence on Neuroplasticity," and saying how neuroplasticity is profoundly influenced by our daily interaction with digital technologies. the continuous engagement with smartphones, social networks, digital platforms, not only alters our social interactions, but also reshapes the very structure and function of our brains. So as you get into the article, it does give some pros and cons. It kind of lands on balance, which we would say temperance, right? We want to have self-control and moderate ourselves in the use of these technologies. Use them for good. Don't overdo it. Some of the positive aspects here would be the increased ability to solve problems, and maybe to think a little bit quicker. Things are being in contact with diverse and dynamic digital environments, where attention switches at high speed and application of different cognitive strategies is required. There can be some good things about that. Also, it gives you learning opportunities, with digital information and learning platforms. So there's a lot of cognitive stimulation and educational enrichment possibilities there. So there's a lot of good things about technology, again, when temperately used. But some of the negative consequences, that one of the big ones is that it undermines long-term attention and deep focus. So some of what you're gaining by these lots of stimulation and quickly, there may be some benefits, but there's also some big drawbacks, such as your ability to have long-term attention and deep focus, which is very important. And especially when you're doing thoughtful work that requires the use of your intellect, you're going to need the ability to have long-term attention and deep focus. Also, for our prayer lives, right? That's going to be key. Now, some of the another thing that I did see is that you'll often see in the list of what's good meditation. Right now, most of these people aren't linking that up with Christian meditation, with Catholic meditation, meditating upon our Lord and the things, Almighty God, and the things of Almighty God. They're not linking it up with the Holy Rosary, the mysteries of the life of Jesus and Mary. But they ought to, they could, and then they're going to supercharge their findings when it comes to meditation, because New Age meditation, while there could be some sort of benefits, spiritually dangerous at worst, very dangerous at worst, and even at best, just kind of empty in terms of trying to just focus on sort of like nothing, and just sort of, trying to annihilate your thoughts and think of nothing. That's not really all that helpful, or quite empty. But Christian meditation, Catholic meditation, the Holy Rosary, meditating on these beautiful mysteries that are before us that we ought to give our attention to, these would get the benefits of what they're calling meditation and then some. And so one of the big things that I've heard pointed to and what's beneficial is this ability to try to focus in meditation. So think of praying the Rosary as you're trying to focus on the mystery as you pray. And the fact that it's hard to maintain that focus just on that mystery, your focus sort of naturally gets distracted into other things. And we're not able to really maintain just a nonstop focus on the mystery. That can kind of irritate us. But the direction that the church has always given on that is, as soon as you're aware of it, your distraction, just bring it back to the mystery. No big deal. Just bring it back to the mystery, and don't let it bother you, and maintain the peace, and just go back to the meditation and keep going in the prayer. And that's really wise and really beautiful. And it lines up with the science, because that's exactly what the science shows, is that when we're having trouble focusing on one thing, we just bring our attention back to it. And when we keep doing that, it's actually using this, we're seeing the science, the evidence of the science of this neuroplasticity in the brain. It's rewiring the brain to strengthen its focus. And so every time you're praying the Rosary, yes, immense spiritual benefits for yourself and those you're interceding for others, but also even cognitive benefits, rewiring your brain and your ability to focus. That's all taking place when you're praying the Rosary properly. So I thought that was quite interesting. Becky, your thoughts?
Yeah, I never really thought about it like that, but that can be a big issue when you're praying the Rosary, and, the constant distractions, especially if you have, kids running around or whatnot. And actually, it's like exercising your brain, go back, keep going back. I'm not sure if it gets easier in time, but I'm sure it's doing something. Seems to get a little bit trickier. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think we have just a little bit of time left, but I did kind of want to go over the vagus nerve if we have time for that, because that kind of ties into a lot of what we're doing. So you may have heard of this, but the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in our bodies, like the entire nervous system, running from your brainstem through your neck to your chest, down into your abdomen. So stimulating your vagus nerve can help to reduce stress, increase a feeling of safety, boost mental health, and improve physical health. So a lot of times when you're looking into the limbic system or retraining the brain, you'll hear about the vagus nerve. And some ways that, you may have damaged your vagus or vagal nerve would be trauma. So early childhood trauma, or any trauma experiences in general, head injuries, neck injuries, because this is the nerve, starting up very high and going down. It kind of has something to do with everything. If you look at a map of it, it has different like tentacles going out into the whole body. If you don't have proper breathing, so if you struggle with shallow or poor breathing habits, your vagal tone will be decreased. Chronic stress or lack of sleep, blood sugar imbalances, environmental toxins, and chronic infections. So symptoms of poor vagal tone, you might not even know you're struggling with it, would be abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, low stomach acid, too low or too high of a heart rate, loss of gag reflex, loss of voice, earaches, unusual blood pressure, high chronic stress, constant fight or flight mode, poor emotional regulation, anxiety, depression, decreased attention span, inflammation, pain. So it's kind of like symptoms of a lot of other things. But what the vagus nerve does, why it's important, because it decreases our blood pressure, reduces our heart rate, it lowers inflammation and pain, it helps us to manage stress and anxiety and trauma, transfers sensory information from the throat, lungs, and heart. It regulates our mood, delivers information between the brain and the gut, regulates our swallowing, and regulates our speech. So different ways that we can improve our vagal tone, like you shared, would be, prayer, we're working with our brain, journaling, breath work. This is where the laughter and the chanting and the singing came in when I was looking into this. This is a great way to activate your vagus nerve. Seeking out safe community, seeking out safety. It's retraining your brain and your body to know you're safe, even in small situations that might seem stressful, but they're not. But if your body's in a constant state of fight or flight, you're kind of always going to feel unsafe. So a lot of this is about knowing that you are safe. Exercising, massage therapy. I would recommend seeking out somebody who does not do Reiki. They can do that without telling you. Nutrition, proper supplementation, B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, and omega-3s, and then seeking out therapy. And that's, again, where this transfiguration counseling would be good. I'm sure there's other good Catholic therapists as well. Go ahead, Jim. All right, yeah. That's it.
Wow. A lot there. Are you saying the vagus nerve? Is that right?
Vagus, VAGUS. And let me just share this really quick. The group that I was on Facebook was the limbic system. Limbic system rewire. That was really helpful for me. That's limbicsystemwire.com or limbic system rewire on Facebook. You can find that out. That was some really good information for a starting point.
All right. Let's keep moving forward with the Lord in all that is good, true, and beautiful. God bless you all.